Welcome back to another episode of the Boss Streets podcast. With us today, we have George Madden. George is well known in the car rental industry in Pittsburgh. He has one of the largest Turo car fleets in Pittsburgh. He also is the owner and operator of the car rental coach business. George, you've been a serial entrepreneur almost your entire career. And I know you're well known in the kind of car rental business, but what is your most unique or most interesting business that you've started?
So, I've been doing business since I've been 12 years old now. Just to give you a little background on me, not by choice. So when I was 12, I used to work at flea markets with my grandmother.
Holy cow.
And we would sell a lot of interesting things. So like pocket knives, lighters, and most interesting, we would sell knockoffs. So we would sell, Louis, Gucci, Prada, all that kind of stuff, but not like the stuff that's on my feet right now, the fake stuff, which was fun. Which is funny because my grandma did it as a hobby. She didn't actually have to do this. Her husband, my grandfather, was a nuclear engineer for Westinghouse, so they did pretty well. But she just, I think, liked the excitement of it and always had fun doing that. But yeah, from there, that's where I got a lot of experience with sales, dealing with all of the different characters you can imagine that you meet at the flea markets. Interestingly enough, the most crazy thing that ever happened at the flea market, the feds came in one time.
What?
And they raided a bunch of the different booths in the flea market because knockoffs were very popular there. That's probably like one of the main revenue sources for most of the vendors, just selling stuff like that, which I have mixed feelings on it. I feel like it doesn't hurt anybody, but also if I own those brands, I might be a little upset too. But they came in, raided my grandmother's stuff. They took it all. My grandma likes to joke that the guy definitely took those bags and gave it to his girlfriends. I don't think he turned them into any station or anything. And then, at 12, I went to the police station because they had to fingerprint my grandmother for that.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. So she's a felon.
Yeah, my grandma's a felon. It was pretty funny, too, going there because they all told me, all right, young man, come forward. And then I said, oh, yeah, it's not me. It's my grandmother. So that was my introduction to entrepreneurship. And also I made my first couple thousand at the flea market selling Guitar Hero games. So are you guys familiar with Guitar Hero?
Oh, yeah. I was a big Rock Band fan, but...
Big Rock Band, nice. So I went into some Kmarts in the area, and they were selling all the Guitar Hero games for $7.
Wait, what's a Kmart?
Kmart? Yeah, it's that ancient store that used to be around.
Yeah. Right.
That's funny, but they were selling the games with the guitar for $7 a piece when they were normally $70. So we asked the staff, like, what's going on here? Wow. Apparently, they lost their license to sell the product with Activision, so they had to liquidate everything. Oh. So the next few days, I spent like every second just calling all the Kmarts within driving distance. Bought like hundreds of these games. Bought every single one of them. Took them to the flea market, and then I made like $10,000 flipping them, which was really good money at like 13.
Yeah, 100%.
That was fun. Then from there, let's see, did a couple business competitions, always stayed with entrepreneurship. But then I worked some jobs to make money around like 16. I worked at Wendy's, I worked at Kmart, I sold flowers on the side of the road for companies on Easter, doing that kind of stuff. Then went to Penn State for finance, where I met one of my roommates there who introduced me to e-commerce. Shout out Nick Andreas, great guy. And he ended up dropping out of school because he started doing like over $1 million in revenue selling jewelry. So he would sell like motivational jewelry that he'd have manufactured in China. And at this time, granted, it was a lot easier to sell things with Facebook ads. Like you could sell T-shirts, you could sell jewelry, you could make anything work. Now the cost of advertising has gone up extremely. You have to have a lot more back-end revenue. But he introduced me to ClickFunnels and like funnel building and how to actually do e-com. And that's where we started a business that was very interesting, to answer your original question. Yeah. So we started doing one that was in the motivational space with jewelry, and then one that was actually a religion-based company. So if you guys are familiar with Wicca at all, so it's like the witchcraft type of stuff. The reason we went with that, we were into niche marketing, and we were going on Pinterest, just finding like different quotes people were getting tattooed on them, and then we would compare them with the big jewelry brands like Alex and Ani, and we would look for like sayings and quotes that they weren't putting on the mainstream bracelet. So we would take like mainstream bracelet designs and then go after niche markets. Like Alex and Ani wasn't making Wiccan jewelry. We just stumbled across it because we knew some people from school and stuff that had that kind of stuff tattooed on them. And I thought, okay, well, that's a good market to go after. I'm not actually that religion or anything, just saw the money in it. And we were able to scale that to, a couple $1 million a year. And then stepped out of that eventually, came out with an educational company that's within that same niche that I have 2 partners with. But then took the money that I made from doing the jewelry businesses and invested in buying rental cars. I got into the rental cars because at first I bought a few rental properties, which I still have. I have a few rental properties in Pittsburgh area. But I saw Turo advertised to me as being like the Airbnb, but for cars. And my wife owns a used car dealership with her father. So I was like, okay, well, I have like the connection to get these cars from auction. I can get really good deals. I don't know too much about cars, but I know how to run a business. So I thought, okay, this makes sense. So I ended up buying cars, put them on a platform called Hire Car at first, which is like the bottom tier car rental service. So it's like you deal with the craziest of crazies, people living in the cars, doing drugs in them, constantly repoing them. But I ended up doing really well. Like the best car I ever put on there was a 2008 Kia Spectra. And I ended up doing over $30,000 on that one car in 1 year in revenue from one woman. And people ask, like, why would she keep paying that to rent a car? Why wouldn't she just buy one? The thing is like a lot of these people don't have the money to save up to get like to put the chunk down to buy the car, or they don't have credit. So this is that kind of like intermediary step where they can still rent. And they use these cars to drive Uber and do Lyft and things like that. So the car's directly related to their income. So it makes sense for them to continue to rent. But
did you find it hard to start that business with Turo and with that other kind of rental agency? Why go with a platform why go with the platform rather than just do it independently yourself?
Yeah, great question. So I didn't find it that difficult because I went from Hire Car, which was the hardest platform to be on, to then Turo, which has a way better clientele because you deal with a lot of like airport guests and locals. So people with a little bit more money, they treat the cars a little bit better. But no, I was pretty good with it because I had experience with rental properties, and rental cars and rental properties are very similar with the type of business it is. So was able to scale that very fast. But to answer your question, why I didn't do private rentals. So I did do private rentals for a little bit, and I still might get back into them eventually, but only for very vetted customers. So what's nice about the platforms versus renting privately, they help you with everything when it comes to the insurance, if you need to repossess the vehicle. They have systems in place to charge the guests for reimbursements. So if somebody brings the car back without gas, they smoke weed in the car, I get smoking cleaning fees. And they have their credit card on file. And if they can't charge the guest, they'll pay me out of their own pocket when using them. And I only have to pay them 10% of the revenue for like all of these additional services. In the private space, so I've done some private rentals. Thing is, it's like you have to repossess the cars yourself. You have to keep the credit card on file, but if that card doesn't go through, now you're talking like you got to go to court. There's a lot more friction in it. Insurance is more costly because you have to buy a commercial plan. And really, it's just for giving them like 10% of the revenue versus like doing it and making 100% my own. I just find the platforms to be a lot easier, but I'm not going to say never. I might get back into private a little bit, but only for people that I vet that say I rent through Turo a few times. I like them and they want to do something long-term, because it doesn't make sense for me to do a 2-day rental privately. If you want to rent for 3 months, then sure. But just with the hassle it is. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting for me to hear all the little challenges and things like that behind the scenes that I think a lot of people would take for granted, like cleaning the cars and insurance. There's a lot of pieces there. But I wanted to ask you one question because it ties in with you can't be in that space if you don't have vehicles. And I know when the pandemic was happening and things like that, inventory was really hard for all kinds of new cars, used cars, everything. Did that time period impact you?
Not as much, but it's because I have connections through the dealerships. If I was somebody that was just on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist trying to source cars, I think we would have had more issues. But just because of our connections, I haven't had a problem with sourcing cars. And actually, right now is a pretty good time to buy. End of the year, they really start to plummet, and then it starts to increase when tax time comes back around.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How large do you intend to expand your fleet of vehicles?
So right now we have 35 active on the platform right now. The most I've had is 50, but I've had like 7 cars totaled recently, and now it's just about getting the cars back on the road. My biggest issue with scaling so far has just been cars going down from being totaled or damaged and then having to replace them. Because I also like to wait till we find a good deal at auctions and stuff. I'm not in a big hurry to replace them, because just like real estate with the car rentals, you make your money when you buy the car. Just like with real estate. If you don't buy the car right, you're never going to make any money. I can't tell you how many Turo hosts that I've talked to that when I actually look at their numbers, they're not making any money because they take out too big of loan payments on the vehicles. They're not accounting for depreciation of the car. And that's why there's a lot of these gurus, they're like, learn how to rent a Lamborghini to own and stuff. But they don't like tell you, well, it's like that thing is plummeting in value after the first year and you put some miles on it. So that's why we deal with all economy cars. And that's one of the reasons I got into the coaching space. So with Car Rental Coach, we've coached over 100 clients so far this year. And it's our first year in business. And yeah, we've really turned around a lot of people's accounts and profiles. We've had people that come to us with no cars. And what's cool about our program, we'll actually source the cars and we ship to all 50 states. So we get them completely ready, get them tested, driven on the road, trackers and GPS hardwired and installed in them. And we do everything. So it's just like, press and play for their own rental car business. And I've dealt with people that have like 20 cars, but they're just not setting their systems up right. They're not automating things. They don't know how to find employees. They don't understand the taxes with it. And we've had a lot of success for our clients. And that's the business I'm like 100% focused on right now. I have employees for the rental cars. And right now, I don't want to say I mastered the rental cars, because I don't think you really master anything. It's like there's always room for improvement. Right. But with the rental cars right now, I have employees, everything's running smooth. It's just simply, okay, let's just keep adding more cars. Then when we hit a certain number of cars, okay, bring on another employee. That's why the focus right now is on Car Rental Coach.
Are you unique in the Turo business in that you operate this more so like a business, not so much like a passive income hobby type thing?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people that get into Turo because at first they just want to cover the payment on their personal car. Things like that. So I would say, I'm in like the top 1% of hosts on Turo. But I have met some great guys. So I was recently in Arizona for the Power Host Summit. I got to meet the CEO of Turo, which was really cool. That guy is sharp. He's together. And I met some other hosts, like the biggest ones in the United States. And I was one of the larger ones after talking to people. But there were a few guys that had fleets way larger than mine. One guy had 1,000 cars.
Really?
Yeah, and I was picking his brain. I don't know what his profit was and everything. Like I'm very about profitability. I like to keep like at least a 50% margin on my revenue. When a normal car rental business, like traditionally enterprise, they're 15%. But just the systems in place and how we buy our cars really allows us to keep that 50%. But some of these other guys, I was very impressed by too.
Does your connection to, you said it was your wife's car, used car dealership, give you an advantage over your competitors?
100%. Honestly, without having that connection, I probably never would have went into the car space. I would have just kept doing e-commerce, which, So if you have a used car dealership, it's like, it's hard to beat me because I'm able to get the cars at a better price than them. I'm able to get the cars fixed cheaper than them. And I already have a commercial location to store the cars where my rent doesn't go up much. And we have access to mechanics and his connections within the car industry for being in it since he was 15. And he is like 48 years old now. So just with all of that, I don't think anybody can beat me in the car space.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question too about Enzo and I were just talking about this the other day. I have a 13-year-old son. He just turned 13 in September. Really smart kid. And he was talking to me the other day and he said, I don't know if I'm going to college or not. He's in a gifted program, really bright kid. And I'm not just bragging about him because he's my son, he's a good kid. He was saying he doesn't know if he wants to go to college. And just in our conversation, were you leading off with your grandma's story about the flea market, and all those little ancillary skills that you picked up clear through Penn State. Think of your education. Do you think that based on what you know, Penn State would have prepared you for where you are now? Or do you think college, this is a non-Turo question, do you think college is something that people can pass up and follow passions?
I think with education and YouTube being so prevalent now, you can learn anything that you can learn in school just from the internet. I don't think college means as much as it used to mean. And I told my own sister, she didn't go to college because my dad and I talked to her, said it didn't make sense. She went into real estate right out of high school and now is like making way more money than I made at her age. So what I will say college does is it gave me connections and alumni. So I went to Penn State, which has a great alumni, and I was able to meet my friend who started a business there. If I didn't meet him, there's a good chance I never would have got into e-commerce. If I never got into e-commerce, I wouldn't have been able to make that initial amount of money. Probably wouldn't have started the car rental. So I think college is good for networking. And if you are going to go to a school, go to one that does have a big alumni. Don't go to I don't want to put down schools, but don't go to one that's not a big name brand one. Your alumni is what you're paying for. And I met some great people there, but I don't think college is necessary to be successful. Just to give you guys an example, so my senior year, I took an entrepreneurship class right at Penn State, which I still think is a funny thing, like entrepreneurship as a class.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's good for some people. I just maybe had more experience going into it, so I felt
you could have taught the class.
Well, funny enough, the teacher actually let me stop doing the normal stuff. Well, professor stopped making me do normal assignments, and then he had me teach the grad school students how to run Facebook ads and stuff. So that's how I got an A in there. Great guy. I learned a lot from him and stuff. But yeah, really, I don't think college is necessary for success. Just go for the alumni and connections if you want it. But just doing it and actually running a business is how you're going to learn.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great point because one of the previous guests we interviewed, Jeff Hancher, he talked about when we asked him for advice, he said that, find a good mentor. And you had mentioned how when you started the e-commerce business, your roommate was kind of your mentor there, kind of helping you understand that business. But when you got into this car rental business and now you're doing the car rental coach and you're teaching people how to get into this business, you're basically mentoring them. Who was your mentor in the car rental space? And if you didn't have one, what were some of the mistakes that you made?
Sure. So one, my father-in-law, shout out Rocky. He taught me a lot about the cars and just the automotive space in general. He never ran a rental business, but just learning about how he ran the dealership really translated some skills to me. But when I first started, I paid about $4,000 in coaching from people that had the largest Turo fleets in the United States. So I would go on Turo, I'd find their YouTube channels, I'd reach out to them, say, hey, how much for an hour of your time? And I spoke with a lot of them, and that was crucial for me being successful since the very beginning. Because the big thing people don't realize, it's I may be in the car rental business, but I'd almost like to say I'm in the insurance business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's a big source of our income, knowing how to handle these claims. People don't realize you can get loss of rental income. So if your car's hit, you can get paid for when the car's down. You can get diminished value, which you can get up to 10% of what the car is worth. And you can get that without owning a business. So if anybody ever hits one of your cars, you can file a diminished value claim, which is basically just the difference between what your car was worth pre-accident and post-accident. Because once your car is hit, now there's a history on it that it's been damaged. Your car's not worth the same anymore. So the insurance will actually pay you up to 10% of the market value of the car for that diminished value claim. So that's another thing I learned. I learned how to speak to the insurance companies, how to get the maximum amount. But those mentors really helped me from the beginning, because I did that as soon as I had one car on the road. I only had an $8,000 car, but I was willing to put $4,000 more into just coaching because I knew I wanted to expand once I saw that one working. Initial mistakes, though, I made. So the coaching really helped me a lot with not making too many, but a major one, I was too trusting when I did the private rentals with some of my clientele. I usually like to see the good in people, and I still do, but now I'm just a little bit more seasoned, so I can detect bullshit a little bit better. So one car that I ended up losing a decent chunk of money on was a Kia Soul I had, and I rented it privately to an older woman, right? And she seemed like, your typical sweet granny, really nice. She was making her payments on time. Then she stopped making her payments, and I reached out to her, and she told me she had cancer, and she was, getting treatments, and I gave some sympathy to that. I felt bad. I was like, okay, I'll let you go another 2 weeks. Then another 2 weeks go by. Then it's like, okay. Then she stops answering her phone. And then I checked my tracker because I was tracking it the whole time, and it was removed. And granted, I don't have the ones that simply just plug into the port in your dash. I get these hardwired into the car, and they're hard to find. So that's when I knew, okay, she's a professional. She removed the tracker. I called the Butler police because she stole this car. She lived out in Butler after doing some research on her on Facebook. And I'll tell you what, that town is interesting, Butler. That is an interesting place. It seems like the police all know everybody, and they weren't willing to help me. Yeah. They said, it's a civil matter. You just got to take her to court. We don't care. We can't prove that it's your car. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of ways we can prove it. Let's just look at the registration and stuff. But yeah, reached out to her, couldn't get anything. And then I did some more research on her on Facebook, and I kind of overlooked the fact that she appeared to be on drugs, and found out the cancer stuff was all a complete lie. And I ended up finding a service. Well, actually, credit to my wife. She found the service. Where, are you guys familiar with Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this guy was kind of similar to Dog the Bounty Hunter, okay? He wasn't like your traditional repo guy, because a lot of the repo guys wouldn't take this job because it was higher risk. He hunted her down. I don't even know how he found her, because he just knew the general area. I think he was going to people that may have been related to her or friends. I ended up tracking her down, jumped in the car as soon as she got out of it, locked it. She's hitting on the vehicle as he's repoing it, trying to break in, screaming, and he ended up bringing the car back. I paid him, I think it was $800, but best $800 I ever spent. I still have that guy's number if I ever get back into private. But man, this car was in rough condition. It reeked of not even cat or dog piss, but I think human piss. Oh my God. I think she was driving around in that. So our detailer was really happy when we brought that back.
I can honestly say in my entire life, I've never met someone who had two felon grandmas in the same conversation.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that is interesting.
Yeah.
I want to circle back a bit on the whole insurance things. I think that's a really interesting topic.
It is. It's so deep, really.
Yeah, because what I'm curious about, though, is if you don't mind sharing, what percentage of your revenue is from those insurance claims? If you don't know the exact number, that's fine. But
no, I can give you a ballpark. So probably around 30 to 35%. Really skyrockets.
Wow.
And what's great for us, since we buy these cars at such great prices, when they are totaled, we receive market value for them. So it's almost like I'm like, hey, Rocky, it looks like I sold you another car, because it's it's like we say we buy the car for $10,000, it's worth 14. We get the check for 14, rent it for a few months, and then make the extra 4. So a lot of people get upset when their cars get wrecked or stolen, anything like that. I celebrate. It's a good thing. We have all our policies and procedures and checks that we get paid every time.
Yeah.
What do you do to repurpose the cars when they're beyond their useful life now? Or have you not gotten to that point?
So we run them into the ground, and then, not sure if I should be saying it. I'll say it. It's fine. It's legal. But we throw them on hire car when they're at the end of their life, because that's I call that the graveyard for cars. And I know if I put it on there within 2 to 3 months, it's like clockwork. It's going to get totaled, and I'll get my insurance check and make more than if we just sold it off the lot. But if it's, say a car that's not worth being put on, even hire car, we'll just usually run them back at auction. Just do that and then trade it in, buy something else. Because we don't want to, if it's that bad, we don't want to sell them to a customer or something at that point. Usually just an auction car, or put it on hire car and boom, totaled.
Good. I'm seriously intrigued by how, I'm gonna use the term calculated you are around this business. You really know your stuff when it comes to this. And, you talked about your mentors kind of helping you along the way there. But there's got to be, in my belief, and I know Sean shares this belief too, is you learn from experiences. So, what are some of the worst cases, hardest times, biggest mistakes in your entrepreneurial career in general that you've made? Would you mind sharing that with our audience?
So just entrepreneurship in general?
In general, yeah.
So when first starting the first e-commerce business, I didn't have any money saved up. I was in college, I was broke, and I took out credit cards and I put all of our ad spend and everything on credit cards, hoping our subscription jewelry company business would work, and went into $50,000 worth of debt, not knowing if it would work. And the first month, I thought I was screwed. I called my family up. I said, okay, I think I'm going to go bankrupt at 20 years old, or 19, I was like 20 years old. And luckily, the next month, it ended up turning around and working, and I was able to pay off the debt, and then it became a profitable business. But I don't know. I would say taking too much risk. Like, I'm a very risky person. I'll continue to take risk. I always do. I just jump in head first and then try to get my way out of it. But I probably would have done that a little bit differently. I would have did like an MVP, so minimum viable product. I would have just said, okay, let's just spend like $2,000 and then see if the ads work and stuff, and then the subscriptions hit and everything goes according to plan. Instead, I put myself $50,000 in the hole, and thankfully it worked out. But that's one thing I learned. Now when I test businesses, I usually do the MVP method. Like even with the rental cars, I started with one car. I had the cash to buy as many cars as I wanted. Not as many as I wanted, but you know what I mean. I could have bought 20 real quick. And then I waited 3 months. So I think learning patience helped me. And when you take risk, to take calculated risk, not to go full in 100%, bet your house on things, but do a little test and then go in and bet your house on everything after. So that's something I learned through entrepreneurship. I learned when picking partnerships that you really have to make sure that you're picking people that align with your goals. You don't want to pick people just because you know them. Like, it's just like, this is my buddy. We've known each other. We hang out with each other. Let's just start a business because he's the closest person around me. And, entrepreneurship can be lonely sometimes. I've been lucky with my partners for the most part. All of my businesses I currently have, love all my partners. Everything goes well with them. Great guys. Just like for some of the early stuff starting out that didn't end up working out, probably wouldn't have made those same partnerships because they weren't people that were willing to take the risk and stuff that I wanted to take. And you got to make sure you find people that are complementary to your skill set. So if I'm really good at marketing and sales, then maybe I want somebody that's really good on the development side and building systems. If you have two guys that are good at marketing and sales, well, you're still going to need to hire somebody else, and then you're not going to get anywhere as fast. So major lessons, don't take too much risk at the very start. Take calculated risk. Pick the right partnerships, and make sure you have a good lawyer.
Yeah.
As you grow, because as soon as you grow, past $1 million a year in revenue, I feel like that's where everybody wants to sue you and take a piece. So
Makes sense.
this was an expensive lesson. So we had the jewelry company. We did a lot of text message marketing, and I would buy number lists that were apparently legal to do. It's like one of those gray areas about texting where it depends on how the number gets opted in for text message marketing. But I received a letter from a lawyer in Florida. He was one of those character lawyers, reminds me like Saul Goodman or something. But anyways, I ended up having to write him a $10,000 check because I sent one person a text message that I bought and was verified. But I found out my broker that I was buying the numbers from maybe wasn't the most transparent guy. So research who you do business with too, because everybody's going to tell you whatever you want to hear to get your money. And then after the fact, they're not going to help you with any fines and any of the recourse. But that was an expensive lesson. And I'd say those are some of the things I've learned.
So circling back on the thing about debt and the credit card debt, you said $50,000 in credit card debt.
Yeah.
So one of the big things for entrepreneurs when they're starting a business is getting funding to start that business and get it off the ground. I've heard different opinions. I cannot speak today. I've heard different opinions from people saying don't go into debt to start a business, make it a cash flow business, fund your business yourself. What are your thoughts on or advice to entrepreneurs about getting into debt to get a product off the ground?
I think it's okay, and I would do it again, but only if you truly believe in what you're going to be doing. Because the way I look at it, when I took that debt out, I was just betting on myself. A lot of people go to the casino and they get into debt. Well, it's like I'll bet 50 grand on myself, every day of the week. But I wouldn't say everybody can stomach that type of pressure. And I don't think entrepreneurship is for everybody. Mm-hmm. And maybe for your first business, you might want to be a little bit more debt averse because you don't have any experience. You don't have any of the knowledge that you would need to have to make a business successful. I'd say maybe if you're on your second or third business and everything you do has been working, it's like, take some debt out, make it work. But at that point, you might not need the debt. But I'd say start with the MVP. Like I said, do something small, see if it works. Like guys I know, when they wanted to do a product, what they would do, they would run Facebook ads, they'd make a funnel. They wouldn't even have the product created yet, so there's nothing to sell. They would just sell it and see if it works, and then they would just refund the people that bought it because it's like, okay, now we have some proof to spend more money in developing something. But as far as debt goes, I think that's good. It's just as long as you know how to use it and you have a solid plan. Don't just spend money to spend money. You don't need a lot of overhead to start. You don't need an office space. You don't need the newest computer out. You don't need a lot of the stuff that people purchase that I think are just like vanity items. It's like, see if you have a product or service, and if it sells, then, figure out what you need to sell more of it first. And to get to like $1 million, I forget the book I read, but it's really just, it's about selling one product good. Mm-hmm. Then to get to 10 million, that's where, you have to start coming up with different product lines and different services. But even with Car Rental Coach right now, we have one service. We have one package we offer for our clients. And right now we're focused on just scaling that to $1 million in revenue, hopefully over this next year. And then from there, we might offer some more services like courses and lower ticket items. But to get to $1 million, it's just you got to focus on one thing and focus on selling it good.
Sure. Oh. And talking about focusing on one thing, you have multiple businesses that you own and operate. You have different business partners. That's going to be a lot to manage. Has it ever been too stressful or like kind of affected your mental health in any way?
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely had been down some dark times with entrepreneurship, where I had too many startups at one time, and I felt like I was going nuts, to be completely honest. It was just like bouncing back and forth, and then, definitely caused some issues. What I do to deal with stress, just hit the gym up, try to read, and then block off certain hours where I don't do any work. But that was, I'd say, about a year ago when starting Car Rental Coach while also growing the Turo fleet at the same time, then having the other businesses running. That was pretty chaotic. And it was, I don't want to say dark time, but stressful time where it was hard to sleep, sleeping like 4 hours a night, wake up in the middle of the night every night thinking about the businesses. There was always a fire to put out on one or the other. But now what I've learned to do is hire correctly. So even with the rental business, I brought in one of my good friends, and I took a decent pay cut from that so I could focus on building out Car Rental Coach because I think that's where the bigger opportunity is. But I've learned to, just hire the right people to help automate things. It's okay to have help. It's okay to pay yourself a little bit less. You can't be greedy if you really want to scale stuff. So right now I'm in the best position I've ever been in because I don't have to do much for the rentals. I still like to advise on the insurance part, but with daily operations, I don't really have to do as much as I used to. I'm all in on Car Rental Coach right now. But yeah, having the right staff made a huge difference, and I can actually sleep good again, and I got a lot of my life back.
Just listen to your story. It sounds like you really know yourself really well. And because I was going to ask you a question about what kind of talent, skill sets, whatever, did you need to put in your circle in order to complete the things that you want to do. So with as many different businesses and juggling so many pieces, there's only so much you can do. But it sounds like the cool thing is you do really know what you need and how to get it done.
Yeah, no, I thank you. Appreciate that. But I always looked at myself as like the big picture guy. That's always my strength, is kind of seeing a few years in the future where I want to take something. Where I've struggled with would be operations and just the systems, which granted, I can do that. I like to think I can do anything that I put my mind to and focus on. It's just some things I'd rather do. And I hate systems. I hate creating the operations. I hate, creating like the support documentation and the SOPs and stuff like that. So that's why I brought on my buddy who's has a science background, so he's more of the analytical type with that, engineering, things like that. And most of my partnerships are actually with people that have engineering backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So for the education business, they're software engineer, mechanical engineer. For the rental business, it's actually a food scientist, but I know that doesn't seem like it would translate over to the cars.
Sense.
But yeah, hey, sometimes people leave food in the cars. They need to clean, but yeah, but still a similar skill set when it comes to just system stuff like that. So yeah, just getting people with the skill sets that you may not have or that you don't want to have because you want to focus on your strengths.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, though, because have you ever heard of EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System?
Say that again.
EOS, have you ever heard of that? It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
I have not.
So it's like my business, we're going through it right now, but it's a way to identify like tasks and things in an organization, how to structure an organization. And one of the big things that they say is an issue in most, they call entrepreneurial firms or with entrepreneurs, is most entrepreneurs are what they call a visionary. They have an idea, they have goals, they know where they want to go, but they don't have an integrator, and they're not an integrator themselves who is that like operational person who can like just get shit done. So, it sounds like you would almost align with that in that, you kind of, it's good to find good partners, but as an entrepreneur who has a vision, it was where you want to go, has different aspirations, how do you ensure that your team is in alignment with you?
So one thing we like to do is just have weekly meetings. I'm not a big do a meeting every single day type of guy. I think it becomes a waste of time. Yeah. But we just have our goals. We outline the top priorities of what needs to be done. And then at the end of the week, we say, what did you get done this week? And we go over everything. I don't like to micromanage people. And I think people thrive better when they're not put into a micromanagement position, because I think that you can step on people. You got to give people room where their ideas can flourish. They have to have their own freedom if they're ever going to be like an A player. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but really just giving freedom, making sure everybody's on the same page, and making sure all the goals are aligned too. So most of the companies, they all differ, but we do equity for certain employees or certain partners to make sure everybody's on the same page. Really just, promoting people. Like even my friend and partner on the rentals that helps manage it now, we're going to start buying him cars that he's going to rent under the platform too. So, this is something he can stay with for years to come. Because at a point, it's like I want him to be able to rent his own cars and have almost like his own business with it too. So really just making sure that goals are aligned. And it's funny what you were saying about how, a lot of entrepreneurs are just the idea guy. As I've gotten a little bit older, I'm not that old yet, I'm 30, but I hate when people just waste time talking about ideas now when there's not going to be any action. There's so many networking events that I've gone to where people are like, oh, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? That's one of my biggest pet peeves I've had ever since I've been a kid, where it's just like, okay, if I say I'm going to do it, then I'm just going to do it. Like, I don't care if I do it poorly. It's just, I'm going to make it happen, because I cannot stand just idea talkers. Yeah. It's because you're just wasting our time. It's like, nothing's going to happen here, bro. Let's move on. Why do you want to talk about it? Do something.
Right. I think on top of that, to kind of piggyback what you're talking about, I think too, we're all business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we're wired a certain way, and none of us want to do a shitty job ever. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be associated with that. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have to, pick yourself up and sometimes go different directions. It's just how it is. But I feel like we're driven a certain way. When you are taking a look at yourself, this introspective thing, how did you identify what your weaknesses are, where your shortcomings are, and then how did you find the right people? And then not only find the right people with the right talent, but get them on the same page as you. Because when our name is on the door, there's not only a sense of pride and things like that, there's responsibility that we have, not only to ourselves and everybody else. How do you draw that out of your team?
So I think number one, you have to look in the mirror and you have to be honest with yourself. And a good way to do that is talking with, say, friends, family, people that have worked with you in business, especially in the past, and have an honest conversation. Like, where do you think my weaknesses are? You have to go into that. You can't come in aggressive and say, hey, what's up, man? What do you think I'm bad at? And I kind of scare them. But no, just to be just truly honest with yourself. Listen to feedback from people closest to you. make sure there are people that also have your best interest at heart too, because you find out as you get older, a lot of your friends really aren't your friends when they don't support your goals. But just really, you have to let your ego die. So I'd say I used to be more ego driven, where I thought, I'm going to be the best at this. I'm the best at this. Like, nobody can do it better. But then I've become a lot more humble as I've gotten older, stepped into more business positions, and really learned to put the ego aside. I think that's the best way to look at your faults. And I've realized, I can be a little bit scatterbrained. I can focus too much on the big stuff and let the operational stuff fail and go to the side. But then you kind of realize, well, if you don't have that operational stuff, then you don't have a good foundation, and you're never going to be able to get to the top.
Right.
And with bringing people's interests and making sure they're aligned, I like to think I'm pretty charismatic. I like to really just like motivate my team, like by letting them see the bigger picture. I make sure that I'm generous. I'm not cheap with anybody that's ever worked for me or employees, and I make sure that all of our interests are aligned. But I make sure I bring people on that have like a little bit of the entrepreneurship bug in them as well. And I don't want to say I sell them the dream, but I help them see the same dream I have, so they see how big opportunities can get. Yeah. And it's kind of bit me in the ass before, where maybe I'm like too overly optimistic and think something's going to work and it's just a complete failure. But I have a pretty good track record, so usually people will believe me. It's like maybe I'm batting like 3 for 5 right now. So
it's kind of cool what you said a couple minutes ago when you said about there's a person that that you're going to help them not only learn this business but acquire some inventory and things like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I like to keep interests aligned, and I like to when people are self-motivated and I see like somebody hustling and want more, like I'll help them build up and step out of that position to keep growing with me too. As long as somebody's hungry, it's like that's what I like the most. I just can't stand laziness. When somebody's lazy, Agreed. It's like, that's cool, man. You can do that, but we're just not gonna ever see.
You can't teach that. Yeah. Like you can't correct that. Like in my opinion, like if I can work and train someone if they're motivated and they're willing to put in an effort. If they're not, though, it's
a waste of time, and that usually means there's something that's broken in them, which that's fine. People can all fix their issues, and I think everybody's capable of redemption in some sort of fashion. But if you're lazy, and that's a personal problem, I don't have time to fix you. I'm not your therapist. I'm not going to sit there and help you like see the reason to be motivated in life. If you're at that stage, then honestly, don't talk to me. Leave me alone.
So you've had a crazy entrepreneurial journey starting at age 12, and it's been stressful. There's been headaches. There's been successes. But if you could go back in time to your 12-year-old self at that flea market, would you do it all over again, or would you pick a different path in life?
Yeah, no, I would do it all over again. But what I would tell 12-year-old me would be, just keep doing the business, because I took a little bit of a break when I told you I worked at like Wendy's and Kmart, which I don't even understand why I did that looking back on it. I think honestly part of me, like for some reason, thought it would be cool just to have like a job with my friends. But I would tell 12-year-old me, I tell him to do the Wendy's job a little bit, because that motivated me to never want to work for anybody ever again. Because I'll tell you what, fast food workers actually work pretty hard. Wendy's was by far the worst job I've ever worked in my entire life. You'd go in there getting screamed by people in their 40s. I burned a chili one time. Everybody's on drugs and stuff. I'm flipping burgers, taking the spicy chicken out of the fryer, getting burns on my arms. That whole place is messed up. But it made me realize I never want to work in an environment like that, and motivated me to stay out. But I would tell 12-year-old me, hey, man, maybe just like stay off the jobs, like start a business sooner. I wish I could have ran Facebook ads and stuff back then, because I'd probably be a lot wealthier than I am now.
That's so funny, the start the business sooner.
Yeah.
You would have told your 12-year-old self that. That's amazing. My journey was a little bit different in that I wanted to get the experience and then, run. And everybody's situation's different. But continue. That's awesome stuff.
I appreciate it. And I was blessed with the fact that my father was an entrepreneur too. He started with a painting business. The reason he became a painter was because it was cheap to do. You just had to, it was like the cheapest contracting profession. Then from there, he now owns Madden Brothers Roofing, and has a very large roofing business. But ever since I was a kid, he was always preaching entrepreneurship. He'd have me get on sales calls as a little kid, talking to infomercial people, seeing how long I could keep the people on the line and stuff just to get better sales skills and communication. But no, without him, I probably wouldn't have been pushed into entrepreneurship at such a young age. So I realized that I'm unique with having that, and not everybody does, and they have to figure it out on their own. So I did have an advantage when coming into that, and I'm not going to pretend like I didn't, because that definitely gave me a head start and helped me.
That's super cool, though. I mean, the thing is that you had, parenting that gave you some of that that little push that maybe you needed sometimes, and also exposure to things that other kids may not have had an opportunity to learn. So that's really cool.
Exactly. And I think a big thing with entrepreneurship, people are so scared to fail that they don't ever even do it. I like the Steve Jobs quote. I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, hey, we're all going to die, right? So it's like, you might as well just do what you want to do. And another thing, I heard this quote. I thought it was pretty good. Anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly. So to explain more on that, let's say you only have 20 minutes for a workout today. Well, is it better just to do like maybe a shitty workout than to do none at all? Is it better to maybe put a Facebook ad up that maybe, wasn't like the best, but at least you have some traction, you're trying something out? I agree. I used to be more of a perfectionist, but now it's like, okay, let's see if it's good, and then it can always be improved. It's better just to keep moving forward. But yeah.
That's good advice. That's something that I struggle with, and my team was just yelling at me about just take a small step. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing this advice. I think people will really benefit from it, especially people who are interested in entrepreneurship. And so with that being said, I'd like to ask the one question that we ask all our guests, and that question is, if you can give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur or someone who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Start now. When I went to a few high schools and back to my own high school to do some speaking and teach the kids a little bit about entrepreneurship. And then I kept getting the same response to them when I asked, like, oh, well, do you want to start a business? They'd say yes. And I said, okay, like, when do you want to start? They're like, oh, like maybe after I graduate, or maybe in a few months or something. And I kept going like, well, why don't you start today? And everybody's face just went blank. So I think people maybe just like the idea of having the business in the future, like it's some sort of like safety blanket or something. Like that's like, oh, like I'll have that later and I'll be successful. It's like, well, if you could plan on starting in 3 months from now, you can start now. So just do it now. Read a few books, learn what you need to do, and then just get moving. Don't wait. Just fail and fail often, and then eventually, if you keep going, you're going to be successful. Everybody's journey is different. It might be 5 years, might be 10 years, might be 20. But if you keep plugging away and you keep getting better every day, it's going to work. So just start now.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. George, thank you so much for coming on. And I really appreciate it. And I truly believe that your insights, we've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, but you, in my opinion, are an entrepreneur who just doesn't quit. You're a serial entrepreneur, and I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having me
Great
on.
story. We appreciate you taking some time with us. This was cool.
Oh, yeah, I really appreciate it, guys. It's a fun time.